Well, hi there. So in this extra practice video related to inflation, we're going to tackle a couple of AP style exam problems related to the Phillips curve, and then we'll do a little bit of multiple choice practice. So let's get started. Okay, so the first part of this question says the economy of Claytonia is in a recession. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the SRPC and the LRPC and label the current equilibrium as point X. And so we do want to make sure we're in a recession when we go to draw that. We'll put that one here. And we know we need to label this UE percent, not just UE. And we can use inflation percent up here. We don't want to just say price levels. We have a downward sloping SRPC representing the inverse relationship between unemployment and inflation rates. And then we have an LRPC that's just kind of that natural rate of unemployment. And it does tell us that we are in a recession. And so if we are in a recession, we must be down here at point X. That's down here. We don't need to have any other labels or anything on here. It's maybe you could if you wanted to put like NRU or something, but you don't really need any other intercepts unless it really asks for it. The banking system has ample reserves. Identify a combination of fiscal and monetary actions that could fix this problem. So fiscal and monetary. So fiscal policy, maybe we increase government spending. We could also say cut taxes. We could also say increase transfers. Any one of those things would cause our X to move up that SRPC. We would also say to lower administered interest rates. And the reason I said administered rates here versus something like buy bonds is because they have ample reserves, right? It would have been buy bonds maybe if it had been limited reserves. At right, draw a correctly labeled graph of the reserve market and show the effect of the monetary policy action. So we're going to need that reserves market here, and we're going to do quantity here, and we could do policy rate up here, policy rate. And this is the one where we've got kind of a wonky look to it, where it kind of has down and then over, and we've got a vertical supply curve in that flat portion. And when they lower the administered rates, it's just going to cause kind of this curve to shift, whoops, almost got it, down. It's not really shifting, it's just more bending the curve down. And that new intercept of the new policy rate is going to be at that new lower point. So we're going to go PR star to PR1. And so that part of the demand curve just bends down a little bit. Based on that change in policy rate, which is what we just showed, what will happen to AD in the short run? We would say AD would increase because consumption and investment increased. And we can even say because the interest rate decreased, right? These are two interest-sensitive expenditures, and so we would say interest-sensitive spending would increase, and so that's going to fix the problem. And so then the last part on graph in part A, label a point Z that shows the effect of the change in aggregate demand identified in part D. Well, that's going to cause us to move up here, and let's just say they got it spot on. They shifted us right back to where we wanted to be. Some more aggregate demand, fix the problem. Now, part F says assume instead policymakers decide to take no policy action. Instead, wait for the economic process to return the economy to full employment. Blah, 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 blah. As the economy adjusts from a recession to full employment, will the SRPC shift to the left, shift to the right, or remain unchanged? Explain. So what we know is going to happen here is SRAS is going to increase, and that's because wages and resource costs will go down. Now, that's the first part that we have to kind of be able to understand here, is SRAS is the mechanism by which this long-run adjustment process to return the economy to full occurs, right? That's what this is saying. SRAS will shift us back. And then this is asking about the SRPC, though. And so we would say SRPC, if we know SRAS is shifting to the right because it's increasing, we know that SRPC is shifting to the left. And we can actually, because it says explain, we can say because SRAS increased. That's actually sufficient to say why the SRPC moved the way it did. The SRPC is only shifted by changes in the SRAS. And so the SRAS rising because wages and resource costs fell is going to cause the SRPC to shift to the left. Remember, kind of moving our arms around a little bit with that. At right, draw a correlative graph of the short run Phillips curve. Show the effect of an increase in the expected rate of inflation on your graph. So we have UE percent. Ooh, that first one was kind of a doozy. Not going to lie. It took us in a lot of directions. And this one only asks for the short run Phillips curve, so that's all I'm going to draw, SRPC. And so I'm done here. What's the effect of the increase in the expected rate of inflation on the long run Phillips curve? Long run Phillips curve, no change to long run. But what would it do? An increase in expected rate of inflation would cause SRAS to shift to the left, and that would cause SRPC to shift to the right. So SRPC to the right. But that's not what they asked us to ask about right here. They asked us about the long run, so there's no change there. Given the increase in the expected rate of inflation, will the nominal interest rate on new loans increase, decrease, or remain the same? So this is saying now we think that inflation rates will be higher. What's going to happen to the nominal rate, the price, the sticker price of a loan? Well, we would expect the sticker price of loans, the nominal interest rate, to go up because those lenders and borrowers are going to try to keep the real rate the same. And if we all collectively expect inflation to be a little higher, then the nominal interest rate will increase by that amount. It'll be like, well, we expected inflation to be, say, 2% higher this year. Let's all just raise the nominal interest rates by 2%, and that will keep the real interest rates the same. So we would say it would increase, right? Will the real interest rate on new loans increase, decrease, or remain unchanged? This one will remain unchanged. And for the reasons that I kind of just talked through just a moment ago. So kind of understanding that they're trying to basically keep the real interest rate the same, and that's why they would increase the nominal rate. E, assume the nominal rate is 8. Borrowers and lenders expect the rate of inflation to be 3, and the growth rate of real GDP is 4. Calculate the real interest rate. Well, this part is completely irrelevant. This part is a red herring, and sometimes you're going to get that. The only part that matters here is IN minus the inflation equals IR. And so we have 8 minus 3 equals 5%. So let's take a look at some of these multiple choice questions, see how we do over here. Number 1, assuming a banking system with limited reserves, which of the following will lead to a decrease in inflationary expectations? In other words, what could the central bank do to reduce how much inflationary expectations have? Well, they could jack up interest rates, right? They could make interest rates go really high, and that would cause a decrease in basically price levels in the economy. And if they do it for a sustained enough period of time, that can cause basically people's expectations about inflation to fall. So what would cause basically that to occur? Let's see, a change in the money supply, that would do it. C, a decrease in the money supply, we would say, therefore, interest rates would go up, therefore, AD would go down, price levels go down, and inflationary expectations would go down in the long run, right? So this is kind of like saying, how could the Fed fix a problem where you have high inflationary expectations, where you have how to fix stagflation? So that's really what this one is asking you about, is that question from the lecture. Number 2, if the money supply is 40, consumer spending is 30, nominal output's 50, what's the velocity? So the consumer spending is irrelevant to this question. The money supply times the velocity equals P times Y. And so this is 50, and money supply is 40, and it's times V, so 1.25 D. According to the quantity theory of money, if a 3% increase in the money supply leads to a 3% increase in nominal GDP, what do we know is true? We know that the V value stayed the same, so C is our correct answer here. For number 4, assume that a country has limited reserves in the banking system, which of the following would lead to inflation in the long run according to the quantity theory of money. So what would cause inflation according to quantity theory of money? The only thing that would cause it is more money. So let's see if there's something in here that would cause that. Sustained purchases of government bonds by the central bank. That would do it, right? Buy bonds, bigger supply of money. And that bigger supply of money would lead to higher inflation. Number 5, the money stock, which is the supply, right? This is just a fancy way of saying money supply decreases, but nominal GDP remained constant. Which of the following has occurred, right? Well, remember, M times V equals P times Y. And it says that this stayed the same, this went down. So what do we know had to be true? We know that velocity had to go up in order for P times Y to be the same value. And so velocity, income velocity of money has increased, A. And we can, don't worry about this income velocity. Sometimes you're going to see it described that way. It's really just the velocity of money. So the velocity of money has increased because that's the only way you can get P times Y to be the same value. Number 6, an increase in input prices, which are resource costs, right? Remember, resource costs are going to affect SRAS, and that's going to decrease SRAS. So let's see, an increase in the rightward shift, leftward. So this will decrease SRAS. Now we don't have an SRAS on here. We have a rightward shift, which is not the right answer. So it would be leftward for that. But we do know if SRAS is decreasing, we know SRPC is shifting to the right, is increasing. And so we would say here a rightward shift in the SRPC. Number 7, if the short run, the actual rate of inflation is higher than expected, what's true? Well, we know that if we are higher than expected, we know that we're right here because this is the expected and this is the actual in our little model of the SRPC. And so we know that the unemployment rate is lower than the actual unemployment rate is lower than the natural rate, right? We know that we must be here for E. Number 8, which of the following is implied by the long run Phillips curve? We know that maybe that's because unemployment is not related to price levels. There's no trade-off between unemployment and inflation. That's true in the long run. So we can say with B. And that's true. That's just the answer with that one, right? These other ones are kind of just thrown in for other possibilities, but they're all incorrect. Number 9, which of the following is true of the long run Phillips curve? Remember, it's just this LRPC, and it's set at the natural rate of unemployment. So it shows there's a trade-off. No, there's not. There is none in the long run. Not in the long run, right? Positively sloped, no, because it's not. It's always vertical. Vertical at the natural rate of unemployment. C is our correct answer. That tells us right there. Number 10, which of the following relationships is illustrated by the SRPC? It would be unemployment and price levels. And if we said goes up, that one goes down because it's in the short run. A decrease in the rate of inflation is accompanied by a decrease in the rate of economic growth. No, that's not what it tells us. Inflation and unemployment. A decrease in the rate of inflation is accompanied by an increase in the rate of unemployment. That is true. B is our correct answer. Again, economic growth is not part of it, so we can rule out those. And these other ones are actually the opposite way. So where it says increase in the rate of inflation accompanied by increase in the rate of unemployment, that would be an upward sloping SRPC, and that doesn't happen. So hopefully this helped you with understanding some of the basics about inflation, of what causes it, how it could be affected by monetary policy actions, and the toe dip into the Phillips curve model. We'll see you next time.